Hello, welcome. We can start. It's nice to see all of you here. Can you hear me? Is the mic working? Yeah, perfect. Hello, Internet. I would like to tell you at the very beginning one of my earliest memories, and it is actually something very simple. It was my dad showing me this very simple trick that to me was completely amazing. It went something like this. It required a simple bottle cap. You know, you see it, then you don't see it, and then you see it again. Of course, to a little kid that was, wow, how are you doing that? Well, now I'm a bit older and I know it's not that astonishing anymore, but it's still useful, as we will see later in this class. So, welcome to Class 5, a game of deception. I know you're usually used to Sebastian giving you the lectures, but today you're stuck with me, so good luck. So the one where we lured them in. First of all, thanks to everyone who worked on this document and to people helping us with the recording. Of course, today we will also have that special lecture we announced last weekend on the Matrix chat, so stay tuned for that. It will be after the first break. And yes, this is the standard, all the links we and you need for class, the live stream, and so on. And we now come to the results of the survey from the previous class. From what I can see, it was, for the majority of you, the speed of the class was all right. For some people, it was a bit too fast, so hopefully this one will go good as well. And we come to the fun part, which is the Pioneer Prize for the previous assignment, which was, I think, the most difficult assignment for us to deploy and handle. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you'll see it in the last lecture when we will talk about the infrastructure that's running the class. But for now, let's congratulate our winners who were really fast last week. So we start with the third place. Very nice mini electro starter kit, some LEDs, some buttons, pins, and so on. So the prize goes to Hofferjan. Nice, congratulations. Oh yeah, thank you. Congratulations. Yeah. Thanks. All right, so we move to the second place, a very nice Raspberry Pi Pico. You can do a lot of things with this. It's very fun thing to play with. So it goes to Motoslub Luvoslav. Are you here? Yes. Yeah. Congratulations. Thank you. Nice. And the first place, the fastest gun in the West, the Citron Maker Nano. Very nice little computer, basically like an Arduino, but you can, it has some LEDs built in, so you can play with it. It's really nice. Goes to Novak Lukasz, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Lukasz. Nice. Yeah, congratulations. All right. So, any questions about the assignment or anything? No? Great. So, just a small reminder, the assignments 2, 3, 4, and 5 and on the November 7th, so in 2 weeks. If you don't finish them by this time, so 23:59, you won't be able to do them later. So if you still haven't done them, this is a wake-up call. And the assignment 1, which was the simple one where you just had to find the flag in your Docker, that one ends next week. So if you still haven't gotten that one point, also please hurry. All right. So the main topics of today's class, which is on deception, is first we're gonna start with some theoretical background on deception, what deception is, why it works, what are the key components, a bit from theoretical and psychological perspective. A very interesting part of the lecture for me at least. But we'll also try to do some practical stuff here to show some concepts. And then we move to cyber deception, since after all this is a cybersecurity class. And then we will have our guest talk by Tim Pappa. And then for the rest of the class, we are going to talk about honeypots, honey systems. We're going to play with them. We're going to deploy them, modify them. It should be fun. So let's start. The first part, deception. Okay. Yeah, I can. Is the microphone? Can you hear it in the recording? Yeah. Okay. Good. So it's just the room then. Yeah. Is it better now? No. I mean, I can't move it closer than this. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, 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 hello. Hi, 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 hi.
Yeah.
Hi, hi, hi.
We'll now? Is it? Can you? Okay, I'll talk a bit louder then. Hopefully it will work soon. So, deception. What is deception? Basically, in some official definition, would be a deliberate attempt to conceal, fabricate, and manipulate factual information to create or maintain in others a belief considered false. Or, as we can say it in layman's terms, deception is when we try to make someone believe something that is not true, either for our gain or for some other reason. And of course, we are encountering deception in many areas of our lives. So, can maybe someone give me some example how we can encounter deception every day? There are many, many areas, and we will talk about them, but let's see if you can maybe name some. Yes? Yes, it's true. Warfare, correct? Any other? Discounts, yes. How? Can you? So yes, that's also true. Discounts often have are kind of deceiving us. They say, oh, it's a 30% discount, now it's this much money, but it was actually all along that price. And that's correct. Actually, advertising and propaganda use deception all the time. Sometimes you even have those false sales. This weekend, pencils are $1.99, and they're always $1.99, but you know, if you emphasize it like that, this weekend, then maybe someone will believe, oh, are they gonna be more expensive after? So you go and buy some pencils, even though you don't need them. Oh, of course, a bit of silly example, but that's the idea. Also in business, a salesman can tell you, oh, there's a high demand for this car, or, you know, I have 10 clients waiting to get this apartment, so hurry up, please. Okay, for the apartments, probably not, since it's crisis everywhere, but, you know. In sports, players often use deception. You know, it's common in football. If you know, like, you pretend like you're gonna move left, but you actually go right, and then the other person looks a bit silly. In politics, you know, we're used to deception there. I think all of us politicians, when they wanna upplay their party or downplay someone else, they just highlight you the positive sides of their plan or just the negative sides of someone else's plan, so to try and kind of trick you. Oh, yeah, I'm on. Okay, I'm gonna move it now a bit. What? Yeah. Also, like military, that's probably the most basic example of deception, and they've probably done most of it in many wars, actions, tactics. I have here as an example, I've put one battle, but there's many, but this is the first one that came to my mind because it kind of happened during the World War II in Bosnia. So due to the time limit, I'll just give you TLDR, but basically the partisan forces were running away from Nazi Germany, and they came to this river, to the canyon, and on both sides they had the Nazis, and somehow they had to get across, and not just that, but their wish was to also transfer all the wounded civilians and soldiers safely to the other side. So the deception they pulled off was basically that they destroyed all the bridges across the river. So the Nazi part of the Nazi army that was on the other side of the river thought that they were gonna retreat back north. So they sent all their military back to help their other divisions up north. And then during the night, the partisans used the parts of the old bridge and some other materials they could find to build some temporary bridges they could cross and get safely to the other side, and also transfer all the wounded and sick people. And it was one of the greatest victories of the war in that area. So there's also a nice movie, if you're interested. Orson Welles stars in it. It's called Battle of Neretva. So Pablo Picasso, I think, did one of the posters. So yeah. In finances, they can give us false growth assumption. Oh, we are expecting to make so much money in the next quarter to kind of get more investors or something. On the internet, of course, we talked about social engineering. Sebastian talked about it very in much detail, and you even played some social engineering 2 weeks ago, so no need for me to explain much there. And it's not, deception is not only something that humans do, we also encounter it in the animal world. You know, the opossums often play dead in order for their hunters not to eat them, because, you know, you eat only what you catch alive. You don't want to eat something that maybe died of some illness. Or even like those fake poisonous frogs that have colors of poisonous frogs but are actually not poisonous at all, but they trick you with their color to think they are. So basically the conclusion of all of this was that deception is all around us, and yeah, we can all be victims to it, and we probably often are. Yeah.
Butterflies that look like owls.
Yes, butterflies that look like owls. That's true, but I mean, there's so many in the animal world. So one thing I want to explain before we move on is the difference between lying and deception, because it's not necessarily the same thing. Because, okay, lying, we can use it for deception, but lying, unlike deception, requires us to make a statement, and that statement needs to be false. While you can do a deception even without making a false statement, remember that trick from the beginning. The trick never says this cap is under my shoulder or whatever, but due to some reasons you might believe that there is. So, and also the deception kind of connotates success, which means that if you don't succeed at deception, that was an attempt at deception. It was not a deception. On the other hand, once you tell a lie, even though it's lie, you know, you successfully told a lie. Doesn't mean that somebody believed you, but you still lied. So those are kind of the differences. Of course, people employ lying often as a tool for deception, but it's not the same thing. So, why does deception work? Okay, this is the fun part. I need a volunteer and I have some candy. So who wants to play? Yes? What? Well, we'll see. No, I really do have a candy. I'm not so okay. Which one do you like? Orange, lemon, strawberry? Strawberry, perfect. Yeah. So no, you don't have to bother. Basically, the game is a very simple one. It's gonna have few levels. We're gonna start simple. When you get it right, we move to the next one, and that's gonna be it. Okay. So I need to. Oh shit. First stage. You guess where the candy is, you get it. Nope. Okay, let's do it again. You guess where the candy is, you get a candy. Yeah, no. But, okay. So it's not my right hand. You guess where the candy is, you get it.
All right, I'll go with your left hand this time.
No.
It's not there.
But you were right before. It's not in my hands. Okay, it was in my pocket actually. But thank you. What I wanted to say is, if you pay attention, I didn't lie. I said, if you guess where the candy is, you get it. I didn't say if you guess the hand. But you might think that the candy might be in my hands. At least if this were not a deception class, but you're already a bit come with, yeah. But because, why? I put my hands in front and you're kind of used to having that kind of, it's, I guess, cultural or social thing that when somebody asks you to guess something and put their hand in front, you assume it's kind of there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So why is that the case? Why does deception work? Because we are biased, and we are really biased. Yeah, some experiments have shown that success rate for detecting lies and deception is somewhere around 50%. And there are many reasons for that, but yeah, mostly when we talk about it, the biases come into play. And it's not, again, something even maybe it's in the whole animal world, not just in humans, scientists have found certain biases. So what kind of biases do we have? Simple ones, personal biases. They are individual. They come from individual experience, from either our education or some traits. And we kind of can get them during our life, our education, or growing up, learning. For example, this might have been a personal bias because you're used as a kid when you're playing some games to, okay, there's something in your hands. You're kind of inclined to guess that there really is something in your hands. Of course, we have cultural biases. They are acquired mostly during the evolution of cultures. So as some culture or nation develops, so their tradition is developing, and you know, these biases come from traditions. The Czech people are gonna have different biases in some areas than, I don't know, Bosnian people or Ukrainian people or American people, because our cultures are different, our traditions are different, so we're gonna be biased towards different things differently, okay? Of course, there are kind of similar biases, but on a smaller level, not of a nation, but of an organization. Organizational biases, they stem from the organizational culture, leadership, some policies. Probably, you know, IT people in some company are gonna have different biases than HR people in the same company. And all their biases can be influenced by the politics inside the organization. And then the most fun ones are the cognitive biases, which are intrinsic to our nature. It's basically how we perceive and process information, how we view the world, and we are kind of born with them. They are inevitable. We can maybe, if we become aware of them at some point, we can try to mitigate them, but still we are always going to be susceptible to them. For example, one cognitive bias could be when you remember something from in your past history and you remember it better than it actually was, either your achievement, so you kind of try to upplay yourself, or there are one example of cognitive bias is where you don't give much credit to your successes to yourself, but to some faith. That's kind of the opposite one, where you kind of downplay your roles. It's not necessarily culturally enforced on you, it's just something that you can't explain, part of your unconscious or subconscious, but it really can guide us through life. And why is that? Well, the most general, not the most general, but one of the most important principles of deception are, and what to keep in mind if attempting deception, is that people tend to perceive what they expect to perceive. And if you enforce their expectations, your deception's gonna be much more successful. But for that, of course, you need to know what people are expecting to see. Of course, with some masses, it's much easier to employ some deceptions than the individual ones, because with masses you don't have to know every person individually and their traits, while if you're doing a one-on-one deception, you need to know something about a person you are deceiving. But are there other things, that biases that make us vulnerable to deception? Of course, we are emotional beings. Our emotions often come into play when we talk about deception. Also, lack of knowledge on some topic. That's often used in politics, for example, because we don't know much about politics as we would like or as we think we do. So it's very easy for us to be played. Of course, information overload. If you're getting too much info at one time, it's hard to stay focused. Repetition is another reason why we might be deceived. If we don't know something about certain thing, if somebody repeats a false statement multiple times, we are gonna become likely to believe it eventually, especially if we don't have knowledge about it. And yeah, some people just have poor critical thinking skills, so it's very easy to deceive them. But yeah, most often it's a combination of multiple of these factors plus the biases, which we can't really avoid. I mean, none of us is really free of biases, so when they come to combination with emotion or something, it's really easy to manipulate people, and there are people doing it successfully even for their living. Yeah. So before I move to the next subpart, again, to reinforce this, because it's kind of really important thing for deception, we tend to perceive what we expect to perceive. So just remember that. Okay, so a little bit theory of deception. How does it work? What do we need to make it work? Some tricks and so on. So basically, the deception needs to have some basic components in order to work. We need, first of all, deceiver and target. Because if we don't have someone we want to deceive, or we don't have someone who is going to do the deceiving, it's pointless to talk about deception. And then the next thing, which is very important, is the deception story. You need a believable story to grasp your target, something that they can follow, that they're gonna find interesting, and that they're gonna eventually, hopefully for you if you are a deceiver, believe. And it takes really a lot of time, a lot of creativity to come up with a good deception story. But it's a crucial part, because you can have the best channel to transmit your deception. You can have gullible target, you can be a very good, but if you don't prepare your story very well, it's gonna fail. So of course we need a channel how to transmit our deception. We can do it online if we are some scammer who does phishing and role plays as a Nigerian prince leaving you millions, or you can come to someone on the street and do a deception story about whatever. And the last component is the target feedback. Of course, it's not necessarily just the target tells you their feedback about deception, but the feedback that you get by observing the target you are trying to deceive. It can be if they are acting as you would want them to after the deception, that's a feedback for you that it worked. If they are not, okay, you need to tweak something, you need to rework your deception story, maybe the channel, and you try it again. And it's basically like in this graph, a circle that keeps going as long as you want to deceive someone. But yeah, you need to iterate multiple times through it in order to get it done properly. So yeah, besides components of the deceptions, we can also talk about principles of the deception. And one of those, well, the first principle of the deception is truth, because if there is no concept of truth, then there is no concept of the deception. The deception needs to be an exception in a generally truthful, honest and non-deceptive world. So if we are deceived all the time, then deception is the default state. So yeah, Denial is the next principle, and that means blocking the target's access to true data. It can maybe even be self-denial if the target is unconsciously or subconsciously blocking themselves to figure or realize something. But yeah, you can do a deception if your target is not well informed about something and if you are keeping that information away from them. The next one, the next principle of deception is of course the deceit itself. It's either simulating something or lying or employing whatever technique to get the deception. And we can also use misdirection, drawing attention away from real assets and activities to what is our deception. Like the misdirection is often used in entertainment, for example, by magicians. You know, they are doing something here, but they're actually doing something with their other hand somewhere else, and suddenly something disappears or appears or explodes or whatever. And of course there's one extra principle, and that is confusion, where we basically try to create so much either noise or whatever works to get the perceptual abilities of our target decreased. So we can try to deceive them in a noisy environment so they can't concentrate or whatever, or talk too fast or too slow or whatever might work to get them confused and not thinking properly about the things they should be thinking about. Which brings us to the two types of deception, which are A type and M type. The A type is the ambiguity increasing, and that is where we make our target unsure in what to believe. So imagine you are trying to find some file somewhere, doesn't matter online or real file, and everything you come across is some fake, bogus files. You know, when you look at them, it just looks fake, like UFO landings and everything's like that. So even if the target comes across a file they should be looking for, they're not gonna believe it because everything's fake. Everything looks exactly believable to the same amount. So the target is not even sure anymore what is true and what is not. So they are deceived in that way. They think maybe what they should be looking for is actually also one of these fake things. And the M type is the kind of opposite one, where we keep most of the things true and realistic, but we make one thing so good that target believes actually in that. The target believes in this false alternative, not in what is the real thing. And it's kind of a harder thing to do because you have to make something that would be interesting to your target, but also not too obvious. So that's a challenge of the M type. And of course, deception, we can have a passive or active one. Passive one would be you design your deception, you deploy it, and you sit back and watch how people react to it. Do they get caught or not? The active one is again harder one, but it might give you some better results. That is the deception, where basically once you adapt it as it's happening. So you get a target, they are interacting with you or your deception, and then, okay, maybe I should change my deception now to look like this because it's gonna make more effect on my target. Or maybe I should stop this part and add this part, or this isn't really working, so I'm gonna upgrade it, tweak it to make it better. But that requires you as a deceiver to be included in the deception actively, constantly. You can just let it run somewhere, like send 1 billion phishing emails and then hope one will actually believe that you are giving them some money. You can maybe also tweak that, but it happens after some time after you gather the data. Here you are gathering your data in the moment as you are deceiving someone. So, another important principle in deception is Magruder's principle, which says that it's easier to induce a target to maintain a pre-existing belief than it is to change it or create a new one. I mean, I think we all know that if somebody really has a strong belief of something, it's honestly better to push a rock up the hill than to try to get them to change that opinion, because we are stubborn as humans, and our brains are lazy. They don't like to think too much, so we kind of have to push them to do it. So if somebody doesn't have a belief on certain topic, it's a bit easier to install them your belief. Still not too easy, but if they already have a strong opinion on something, tough job, good luck. But so yeah, this is something to keep in mind when doing deception. Make them believe what they already believe, because every successful deception must contain at least 95% truth. If you're gonna make up everything, they're gonna figure you out immediately. But if 95% of what you're saying or doing is actually true, it's gonna work. You know, I said if you guess where the candy is, you get a candy. I didn't say if you guess in which hand the candy is, you will get a candy. That would also be lying, so we're losing a bit this percentage. Also the thing with a trick with a cap. So the more truth and then just tiny little bit lie that's gonna shift you in the target in the direction you want. So to recap kind of this first theoretical part, actually on deception from kind of psychological and theoretical perspective, to create a good deception, you need to be imaginative and creative. You can train your creativity, don't worry about that. But you need to understand why you are doing perception and what is the purpose of it. What you want to achieve at the end, basically why are you doing it. The setting in which you will be doing deception, you need to understand your target. You need to do that first reconnaissance step to research your target, or it can be an individual or a group. And you need to prepare well, because preparation is always like half of work, and then everything else is your style of execution. So, yeah. Are we okay so far? Is anybody sleeping? You're good?
There are prizes for questions, right?
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, exactly. There are gonna be questions later, of course. Both candy and these nice homemade whistles. So, if you want this, you just answer some questions. All right, so we move to cyber deception. Okay, what's cyber deception? A question for you. Also, internet, are we good? Good, yeah, great. Who wants to whistle? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So just to repeat for the people online, basically a deception, but it's happening in the online space, on the internet, using modern technologies and online space. Thank you. Catch. Hopefully. Okay, you'll come after. Okay, I'm gonna put it here. I mean, I can try to throw it, but I'm probably worse than Sebastian was, so I don't wanna like hit anyone. So all right. So yeah, basically cyber deception is a form of deception that leverages digital tools and the online environment to mislead, manipulate, or confuse a target. And it is used both by attackers and defenders. So how can attackers use deception? We've talked about social engineering 2 weeks ago. We were pretty familiar with that. But there are other stuff like, okay, phishing, which also uses social engineering. We have evil twin websites, which are websites designed to look like the actual ones, but are actually fake, and then they collect your data, and you're, well, then goodbye. We also have the evil twin, like those rogue Wi-Fi points. I think we were also talking about them, where you just create a Wi-Fi with the same name as the name of point that someone would expect. There's Trojan horses, probably one of the most famous examples of deceptions and one of the oldest ones with the Trojan horse. And now we have them, of course, in the cyberspace. They are mostly used to distribute some spyware or similar. And another tool that the attackers can use is steganography. And now we're gonna do something practical finally, so you don't fall asleep together. So, steganography, there is definitely nothing suspicious going on. What is steganography? I don't know if you've ever encountered it, but it's basically a practice of representing information within a medium, whatever medium, in such a manner that the presence of that information is not evident to human inspection, or today in cyberspace to some machine learning tools or agents and etc. So for example, you want to talk with someone and you shouldn't really be exchanging some information. You embed it in a photo, you send a photo, whoever monitors your communication sees a meme that you are sending and is thinking, okay, they are sending memes, nothing suspicious going on, but when they unpack the photo, they see your secret message and you can make some arrangements like that. So it's actually good for situations where, for example, encryption might raise a some suspicion. Because if somebody sees you exchanging encrypted messages, they're gonna, okay, they're talking about something secret. Okay, now I'm interested. They shouldn't be doing this. Everything should be public. I want to know. So if you don't want to raise suspicion, steganography is a good thing. But it is a bit of a security through obscurity, so it's never a sole security solution. Another advantage of steganography is you can use multiple types of media, as I already mentioned, to transmit messages. It can be photos, video, text files, audio files, and so on. But it also has some disadvantages, of course. If you want to use steganography to transmit some huge files or something and you embed them in a small photo and suddenly your photo is 50 gigabytes, it's going to be suspicious. Or it can, if you embed something in your photo, for example, it can even degrade the quality of the photo and someone's going to see the photo and like, okay, there's something going on here. So what are the main differences between steganography and encryption? Firstly, steganography hides that there exists information. The encryption doesn't hide. The encryption doesn't care if you know there is some information being transmitted. The encryption cares that you don't know what the information is. So that's other difference. Encryption is designed not to be broken. Steganography is designed not to be found. But once you find it, then you're kind of screwed. But steganography as well can be encrypted. So if even something is found, then you move to this layer of encryption protection. And so how do attackers in cyberspace use steganography? Well, for example, in photos, they can replace some pixels with some malware code. You get a photo, it executes really nicely, and goodbye. They can use steganography to send commands to command and control servers, so like botnets, I think we talked about that, where you control a network of bots that you infected. And you can hide some stolen data. If you need to transmit stolen data, you can hide it in some file that you are allowed to transmit over the network or some photo, and then exfiltrate or transmit the data you shouldn't be. Okay, so let's play. Let's try steganography. When photo is more than just a photo. So we are gonna download this photo here. And I'm just gonna rename it.
Question, do they download that in their computers or in the containers?
In the containers, yeah, sorry. So, yeah, you can do this in your containers. We're gonna, the online people, you can do it in CyberLab. It should be working for you as well. So I'm just gonna rename it. We're gonna see in a second why. Please stop me if I start going too fast, this part. So the photo basically looks like this. I don't know if there's anything suspicious for you here so far. No, I mean, it looks pretty standard. Some books, some famous titles. Who has read any of these books? Yes, thank you. Who has watched TV shows or movies? Yes, thank you. Oh, perfect. Nice. So, we have our photo with some Agatha Christie Poirot books, kind of convenient for this class. But is there more to this photo? Let's check. We're gonna analyze it. So first we're gonna use EXIF tool. It's a very nice free and open source software. You can use it to read, write or manipulate metadata in images, video and PDFs. So in your Dockers you can do apt install EXIF tools. Wait, why am I not in my... Oh, yeah.
Tell us if something doesn't work and we can go and help you, okay?
Yes.
Online as well. Try to follow the steps. If not, chat in Matrix.
Right. So, are we good so far? Everybody got EXIF tools installed? Yep. So, let's try to apply it on our photo. And what do we see here? Some information about photo, date and time of creation, download, etc. And then here in a comment section, we actually see a nice message transmitted in this photo that wasn't obvious initially. Yes, I'm a comment trick. I hope you get the reference. Another things we can use to analyze photos, and did the EXIF tool work for everyone? Did you try it? Yes. We can try to use strings, basically to print strings of printable characters in files. So let's try strings. How does that look like? Oh, sorry, it's strings. And we got a bunch of stuff here. It's all the basically metadata of the photo, and we can find another message here. We need hex to see this, but we can also use strings, as is evident now. So we can even try to create a hex dump of our photo and see what the image might be hiding. So it lists it, and look, we see this part here. Also, another nice thing is, since we know the format of the hidden message in these files, we can do nice grep. Let's try BSY and see actually all the hidden messages that we have in our photo. Okay, did you try EXIF tool strings hex dump? Did it work? Yes. Anyone have any issues? No. Online? Good. Yeah. Thank you. So, using these tools, we found some hidden messages. So we might be wondering, okay, how can I hide the messages for them to be visible like this? Of course, these are very simple ways to find messages, and anyone who suspects steganography will easily find them, but it's still a nice trick to know. And you can, if nobody's suspecting steganography, then it's simpler for you to do. So let's try how to hide a message. We're gonna use our same photo, and we're gonna hide a new message in it. I'm just gonna change it to, I don't know, something like BSY live test. So basically I put this message at the end of the file, and even if you read this, if you open photo with Notepad, you're gonna see this message. But look, we can try hex dump or strings again, and there it is, the BSY live test. So this is one way to hide these messages in photos. Now, with if you remember, with EXIF tools, we found our message in the comment section of the metadata. So if you want to, for example, hide your message there in a comment, you can do this command and hide your message in a comment of a photo. So I'm just gonna put new comment. Just take note, this is gonna, I think, overwrite the old comment. Okay, so we did something. So if we repeat the EXIF tool Poirot JPEG, we should see, no? Ah, sorry, yeah, it should be, I forgot to replace it. Yes. Let me check. I think it was working. No. Oh, okay. It yeah, it updated. I just, my message wasn't corrected, formatted, yes, correctly. But yeah, as you can see, the comment section should be updated now. All right. So when the time for the break comes, you can even try it yourself. Of course, there are many other methods. You can, other places where you can hide a message. You can check them out online. You can even ask ChatGPT. But yeah, during the break, if you want, you can find some nice photo, hide some nice message somewhere there, and you can put it in the random room in your in our Matrix chat for your colleagues to see a nice photo and read something nice. Just please make sure it doesn't violate any ethical concerns of the class. Online people as well. Thank you. All right, but if we want to hide something better, or to use better hiding places in our photos, we're gonna need some better tools. So we're gonna go ahead and install StegHide. So it's basically a tool to hide text messages or files in images. So we can install it first. Should be quick. Yep. And then we're gonna get a new photo. Again, you can do this, you do all of this in your Dockers. Online people in the cyber lab, please let me know if there are some issues that I am unaware of. All right, so we have our nice cat photo. We can even check it out. It's a nice cat. So far, it's an ordinary photo so far. We still haven't put any steganography in it. So let's first prepare the file we want to hide in this photo. Let's say we want to exchange our data information through a text file. So let's put something like all right, and now we're gonna use our StegHide to hide this file in this photo. And it's gonna ask you for a password, so at least remember it for the next 5 minutes where we're gonna need it. All right, so embedding should be done in the photo. Are we all there? Yes, right? So now let's check out if maybe the photo changed somehow. We can copy the flag to your computers. Oh, sorry, you do this from your own computer. And I'm in the, so to get a file, you go to your own. Yep. And you're gonna need to put the port of your computer there. What? 47, yeah. Sorry. And yeah, for the online people, you can also do this. Go to your, there's a command for you. Put this strict host checking no, so do not confirm the identity of the remote server, and do not store the host remote, the remote host public key. All right, so I should have now this photo probably in my downloads. Okay, so it's time for the password for the online people. Improvise. So today's password is byte flip, right? So online people, I'm gonna leave it here for like 3-4 more seconds, and then I'm gonna close. It's E, I think. Yes, it's BYTEFLIP. All right, that's it. So, did you manage to download the image on your laptops? And so it should look, nothing special has changed, right? So let's extract our file, actually. And you're gonna see it's gonna ask you for your password. So you're giving the file you want, the medium where you're transferring the file, and where you're gonna store what you extract. And it's gonna ask for the passphrase, and it should be extracted. So if you want to transfer your files with someone who knows this password, or if you just want to transfer it from one place to another and you're gonna know the password, StackHide is a really nice tool. Of course, you can even not put a password, but then everybody who tries to get it by just clicking enter when they're asked for a passphrase will be able to extract. So let's check the file, and yes, it's hello with one L, of course, hackers. All right, so did everybody manage to hide the file and later retrieve it and see the photo on their desktop?
Did everyone try? Do we need more time? Like 2 minutes? Remember, it's important that you do it, right?
Yep. All right, so if everybody has done it, I will just talk a little bit about Steganalysis. It's basically, it's analogous to what cryptanalysis is for cryptography. it's study of trying to detect messages hidden using steganography. It's hard, and it involves checking various protocols, if they are okay, if the format is respected or not, if there are some anomalies in the carrier, and etc. And some things you can look for as a stag analyst is inconsistencies in data compression, or if some neighboring pixels are distorted, and so on. So just before the break, I will tell you about deception for defenders, because it's going to be a nice intro for our guest talk after the break. So why would defenders want to use deception? Isn't deception illegal? Well, not really. It depends on the purpose and what you're doing with it. One of the reasons we would, as defenders, want to use deception is to enhance protection. We always want that, and to gather some intelligence on attackers. If we can learn more about how they behave, what they do, that's good for us. And it can help us mitigate cyber kill chain. Because if you look at here, cyber kill chain has like some 7 steps. And in each of these steps, you can put a different deception to catch your attacker. For example, in the reconnaissance, you can put some false information. If they are doing reconnaissance on your company, you can create some fake fake employees of your company, or something for them to try to exfiltrate, you know, passwords of those people who don't really exist. We can use in weaponization or exploitation stage to put some false vulnerabilities in our systems, so the attackers will try some exploits there, and we will see their techniques, what they want to get, what techniques they are using, etc. And of course, we can put some like fake IPs or fake protocols running. So if somebody interacts with those protocols, we know, okay, this is not us. We don't use this in production. This is someone actually scanning us or attacking us. But yeah, there are many examples. We have honeypots. We're going to talk a lot about them today. But they are basically fake systems designed to lure in attackers. So what we're talking about now. And we have there Honeytokens, honey files, honey words, honey words are, for example, passwords that no one is using inside your organization, let's say. So when somebody tries to log in with that password, you're like, okay, somebody is trying to attack us or exfiltrated some data from us, so we should be careful. Another interesting technique is notifying people about deception. There's a very nice paper by Ferguson, and she was researching basically if she tells the attackers, okay, there might be deception present, a lot of them think, okay, this message was actually a deception, so I'm going to go around the system as if there's nothing in there, but there's actually many more deceptions. And yeah, from real life, if we look, like the first person who ever did a honeypot was Clifford Stoll. I'm not sure if you know about him. Truly an amazing and genius guy. Back in the 80s, he did a first honeypot to catch some KGB agents trying to exfiltrate some data from US. And he explains it in his book, Cuckoo's Egg. He's actually a physicist. He was working as a student at some AI center, because that was when the late 80s, early 90s, when the internet was just small baby. So every scientist wanted to do something with it. And there's a very nice TED talk of his. So if you don't know him, watch it. He's amazing. Okay, so I guess we can do a break and see you in 10 minutes. Thank you. Yes, and after the break, we're going to have our guest lecturer tuning in. All right. $38.
Yes, one more audio check. Okay, we have audio. Yes. Can you speak, Tim?
Yeah,
Okay.
Can you hear me?
And can you hear me, Tim?
I can, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
All right, good.
Perfect. We are on. Okay. So you can see my screen, Tim, right?
Yes, I can.
Amazing. All right.
Recording in progress.
You are being recorded. All right. So, welcome back, everyone. I'm very happy to introduce to you our first ever in this class external lecturer, external talk. So today we're gonna have a Tim Pappa, an incident response engineer, cyber deception strategy, content development, and marketing deception operations at Walmart Global Tech. Before he worked at FBI, he was a supervisory special agent at BAU, Behavioral Analysis Unit, and he was specializing in online influence and cyber deception. So a perfect talk for our today's lecture. Tim is also senior behavioral consultant for Analyst One, an adjunct professor at Capital Technology University, and he will be talking today about behavioral analysis as an adaptive methodology for cyber deception design. But I believe Sebastian wants to say something.
I wanted to say that Tim can look at you from the video there, so he has this video, okay? And he can hear you from the microphone. So anything you want to ask, we'll do it in the microphone and in the chat matrix channel, okay?
Yes, thank you. So
and welcome, Tim.
Tim, I'm gonna give it to you.
Okay, great. No, thank you, Maurice, for that introduction. I met Veronica and Sebastian Maurice this past summer, and they told me about this course, so I was very excited, and I'm very thankful that you all asked me to come and speak briefly on this. And the introduction that you went into, Maurice, was a really great foundation because deception does have so many layers to it. So this is going to be one piece of that, but I thought that was a great introduction to the foundations of everything we want to consider, right? When we're thinking about deception, like how it works and how you design it. A little bit about my background. Most of my background's in communication, not psychology necessarily. In terms of being, I was a journalist when I was going through school, and then I was doing research overseas, and that's where I really started to see, like, in application, how people respond to other people and how people respond to messages and content. I was shadowing proselytizers living in Islamic boarding schools in Indonesia, and I was specifically shadowing very progressive proselytizers because I wanted to understand, like, why is it that when they speak to audiences that are very conservative, that these audiences really respond to them. They really seem to find them to be authentic. And a lot of that had to do with the presentation of that proselytizer, right? How people saw him as authentic and credible and funny and good looking, and how he would connect with people with things like telling stories, singing songs that are like oldies but goodies, and people could finish the lyrics. And he'd tell jokes. So there'd be like nostalgic elements, there'd be emotional elements, and he would connect with people on all these levels, right? And he would have the traditional authoritative cues too, right? Because he had been on Hajj to Mecca, he dressed a particular kind of way. Obviously, he was fluent in Arabic and could read the Quran in Arabic. So he had those things that gave him authority, right? And there were all those layers, and we would call that like having depth, having dimension. And when people interact with someone that they think has depth, they tend to find them to be authentic. And when someone's vulnerable and open with other people, they tend to find them to be authentic. So this is an experience where I saw firsthand how people respond to messages and content. Would you mind just scrolling back up a little bit before I move on? Sorry. So fast forward to the FBI. The last 6 years of my time with the FBI, I was a profiler. And this is also where you really start to see how can you apply theoretical frameworks to actual practice, right? How can I apply research literature to operations and investigations? So again, firsthand, I got to see when you try these things, how do people respond to it? At the BAU, my main focus was cyber. So I was looking at a range of people online, a range of skill level to see how they behaved, how they responded to certain events. Because when you're looking at behavior, you want to see someone's behavior over a period of time to start to point out what is it about them, how do they respond in certain situations. And this all kind of led to being a cyber deception practitioner in industry. I bring that up because everybody has different backgrounds and there's no way you can be an expert in one particular area. But definitely on the team I'm on, the training and education that I do as well on that team is meant to take people from all different backgrounds, right? Pen testers, software engineers, incident response engineers, and kind of naturalizing them to approach cyber deception design in a similar way. That's kind of what I'm going to walk through today. So if you could please scroll forward.
Of course. Can you maybe just
Thank
speak a
you.
bit louder?
Okay. So the first thing I wanted to throw out there was a picture of this thing. And I'm wondering, does anyone know what the purpose is of this object?
Anyone know the purpose of that?
Yes, we have Candy here.
And I will go to for stray cats, so the cats don't go in. Anyone? Marketing.
Yeah, I guess it could be that too. This is actually just a dog decoy. It's a fake dog. And this is specifically made to scare away geese that are flying above, because people, especially at schools, they don't want geese to keep landing on their fields and they don't want them to keep pooping all over the fields. So they just put these in the ground, and you see this is lightweight plastic, and when the wind blows, the dog kind of moves, and it can move around in 360. And looking at the dimension, the fact that it's black and has those distinct outlines, imagine being geese up in the air and looking down at a distance at this. It probably looks real. And I'm not an expert on the vision and capabilities of what geese can see, but that's the design of this. Even if they landed on a field and got close, because this thing moves, it looks lifelike. And this is a great example of how deception incorporates all these elements of an interactive process, right? Because it's not just like a message that creates some erroneous decision making in somebody, but it's that sense making. It's that whole process of you see something, you hear something, you're told something, you read something, and then you're processing it. And for geese, there's a lot of elements to this. This would be a predator to them. So there's fear and emotion and all these things at play. That's why deception is such a comprehensive, holistic experience for people that you're trying to deceive. And so when you're designing it, you have to consider that as well. Can you move to the next part of it? So what you're going to see here are this stock photo here of a package of golf balls. And then you see a photo of golf balls on a basement rug. And if you could just scroll up a little bit to the question. So seeing these two images, if you're on eBay and you're trying to purchase some golf balls, which one do you think you'd make a bid on and try to purchase?
So, which one would you bid on from these two selling images of golf balls on the internet? Real life, by the way. Which one would you buy? Raise your hands. Sorry? The first one we have there, do you mean the box? Anybody else?
We can actually do a show of hands because Tim sees the room, so you can do.
Oh yeah, good idea.
No, all of it. Yeah. So show of hands. Can you put the question back?
Yes, of
please?
course.
So, yeah, what would you bid or try to purchase? Can you?
Yes. First one.
Yeah, which
the box.
the two pictures.
Box, majority, and who is gonna buy the second one? Well, I will go half and half.
50-50, yeah.
50-50, maybe 49-51, Tim.
Okay, so that's interesting because a study has been done on this back in 2015, and the theory they were looking at was something called warranting theory, and it's essentially when we see content online, how do we make evaluations on it? How likely is it we think this has been manipulated? And overwhelmingly in that study, people chose the picture of the golf balls on the basement rug. And part of the reason was for that, when you're actually on a site like eBay or Craigslist. Put yourself in those shoes where you want to be sure that whatever you're spending money on, that you're actually going to get. And in that study, people tended to conclude that stock photo might be fake. Someone might be scamming me. But the fact that someone would take a picture of a golf balls on their basement rug, while that doesn't look great, it's probably real. And if I purchase this, I'm probably going to get what I purchased. That's a little bit more of a reflection of reality. This is more of an artificial example. But when you're trying to look at what you want to purchase online, this is an aspect of it. And this is also another great reference point to what Maurice was talking about, that not all of deception has to be a lie necessarily, but it certainly is a presentation. It's communicating something. Can you continue scrolling, please?
Sorry, can I interrupt? Can you speak up a little bit,
Yeah.
Tim, or closer, just like a 10%?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Hold on. So speaking briefly about behavioral analysis, what's the approach on that? The method is really grounded theory. And if people, I mean, grounded theory can be a little confusing to people. What I'm really talking about, you might be familiar with things like inductive or deductive or abductive reasoning and interpretation, like a combination of those things. But grounded theory, what we're really talking about is you're looking at data and behavior. And from that, you're trying to see, are there theoretical frameworks that apply to that when you're trying to do analysis on behavior you're looking at? And so that could involve all kinds of theories potentially that you could apply to it. But really, the basis of behavioral analysis is grounded in victimology and criminology. In victimology, what I'm talking about is that relationship between a victim and an offender. And if you're talking about a cyber offender, even if I don't know who they are, based on who they appear to be victimizing and targeting, is going to start to tell me a lot about them in terms of their capabilities, their preferences, and their behaviors. And criminology is about systems of crime and targeting people. But victimology is really where to focus. And ultimately, what I'm most interested in when I'm doing behavioral analysis is that individual and their relationships, because that's going to impact their decision making. So you can think about that in terms of, if you have a ransomware gang and you have some idea about who they might be and who they target and who they victimize, and maybe the kind of relationships they have in their circle or their affiliates, that's very important to know if you're designing deception or some kind of influence to impact their decision making. Also, digital criminalistics and cyber pathways. I'm talking about forensics here, of course, but our approach has often been break it down like a crime scene, right? Like, we want to see methods of operations and tools and techniques, but is there ritual involved? Is there staging of techniques and things that they're doing on the network? That can tell us a lot about an offender. And same thing with a pathway. You think about like pathways to violence online and how people have a grievance or they conceptualize something they want to do, and then they get motivated, and then they do research about how they can get there. Well, there's pathways as well that kind of parallel that. So again, application of relevant theories and concepts. It can be a number of things. As an example, I'm looking at the theory of psychological ownership, and that's kind of the feelings we have about products that we own or that we want to own and how that reflects us as people. Well, that's important when I'm looking at, say, a hacktivist who makes her own merchandise about her hacking experience. That might tell us a little bit more about her and her motivations and her choices, so I can understand her better. Ultimately, the behavioral analysis is about finding behavioral vulnerabilities. I want to identify vulnerabilities about this attacker so we can exploit them. And exploiting them can be technically or behaviorally in some way, but it's really based on their personality and their motivations and their choices. All of that's important for creating effective cyber deception design. Can you move down some? The basis for me is using Bill Whaley's deception framework. You'll see it in a second. This is a framework that's been around for many decades, but Barton Whaley is a deception scholar, goes into it into greater detail on some of his published and unpublished works. And when he's talking about like misperception, creating misperception in other people and what they're seeing or thinking or hearing, he breaks it down in terms of like qualitative and quantitative attributes. And by qualitative, he's talking about the variety of the content and the deception that they see. And all the different ways you might be deceived or could be deceived. And by quantitative, he's talking about the intensity of that. Like, to what degree are you deceived? To what dimension or depth, right? One thing he also emphasizes, you'll see it in a second, but the basics of deception as a framework, or simulation and dissimulation. A lot of people might be familiar with that. I think you touched on it too, Maurice, as well. But simulating is just, again, showing the false, and dissimulation is hiding the real. And there's a breakdown of that. But Barton Whaley really emphasized, you got to think about this as a simultaneous thing. It's not one or the other, it's happening at the same time. A lot of people miss that. I missed that for a long time. Seems very obvious, but as an example, if you scroll down and we can look at his framework for a second. This is Barton Whaley's, Bell Whaley's structure of deception, the framework, where you have dissimulation and simulation. And you might know these by other terms as well, like simulation, inventing, and decoying. Well, we're kind of talking about creating a honeypot, right, as an example. His point, though, is you can't have one without the other. So if he's trying to dissimulate that he's wealthy, in his house, he wants to look poor. He wants to simulate that he's poor, and he does that by burying his gold coins in his backyard. So he's simulating that he's poor, and he's dissimulating that he's wealthy. Those things have to happen at the same time. And you got to think about that in terms of when you're designing deception. You got to consider both. What's simultaneously happening here? You can't. Approach I've seen for a long time is somebody just picking one technique here, like, I want to use masking under dissimulation to produce this kind of effect. But there's another aspect to that as well. Can you scroll forward, please? So to briefly sum up that approach here, as a practitioner, we want to do a lot more than just like annoy attackers. Because if you look back at the industry, what has kind of been the norm for a long time? Well, deception is essentially active defense, right? And the idea is like you want to engage attackers with sometimes passive decoys, tripwires, but you really just want to slow them down and annoy them and frustrate them. But we want to do a whole lot more than that. We want to manage our environment completely, if possible. And the way to do that I've seen, is building behaviorally based designs. So it's got to be, we observe attacker behavior, we've documented attacker behavior, and now we customize a build, and this can be infrastructure and content as part of that storyline, right? To create something that is behaviorally responsive to that individual attacker, even if we don't know who they are. And when I'm talking about applying a transdisciplinary approach, I'm really talking about not just academic research, but operational research as a practitioner out in the field, and bringing those experiences comprehensively to custom building everything and repurposing content for use in deception design. And so that expanded Bell Whaley Foundation, that's the foundation, that's my starting point along with behavioral analysis. So moving on to the next, integrating this method and approach. Like I mentioned, behavioral analysis should always be your starting point, but there's other aspects to this that can be very exploratory and allow you to be very creative. So when I'm talking about considering far and near analogies when designing cyber deception to influence behaviors, by far analogies, I'm talking about analogies you would never think are really relevant to what you're talking about, whereas near would be kind of relevant. But the research on that's interesting because using far analogies can really expand people's creativity. So if you look down below here, I have the pictures from a study in the 1920s on camera trapping. And camera trapping is like wildlife photography, where you set up a camera and there's no person around, so that it has automated photos of animals out in the wild, so it's not disturbed by people. Nowadays, of course, it's much more modernized, right? And you have video capabilities as well. But the idea is that, as an example, a wildlife photographer who is tracking wolves, yeah, he can understand that they probably live and move in these certain spaces of like a national park. But what he's really looking for is their kill sites, where he finds carcasses. So he knows this is where they've been, this is where they will return. And he sets up a camera with camouflage, so it's embedded in that environment, and it looks real and natural, and hopefully the animals don't notice it. And this is where he thinks he's going to see the most natural behaviors by those animals. And even in the 1920s with these cameras, they were finding out some animals are really move at night. They're nocturnal, and before they didn't know that. And they wouldn't have known that if they had a person there hiding, waiting for a picture. Well, think about this as an analogy to cyber deception design. In your network environment, you do have collection tools, but can you enhance those tools and enhance that collection based on the behavior you're saying? If you see attackers somewhere in your network doing queries for certain things, can you create content that when they search for that again, it's going to lead them to another part of your network? So you've channeled their attention and you've brought them over so you can enhance even more collection on them. Is it possible there's a part of the network where they don't think they're being collected on, but they are, and you've really made your tools sensitive to collect on them, kind of like a camera trapping method? So you really get rich behaviors from them because they don't think they're being collected on. That's an example of using a FAR analogy. If you scroll down, here's another example that we've applied, as well as looking at from the 1980s, the Afghanistan Mujahideen, examples of their ambushes and raids, and how we might apply that to cyber deception design. And in this case, what you see here is the Kabul River, and what the Mujahideen would do to the Soviets at the time is try to draw them to that river, because this is their environment, this is their network environment. They're familiar with it, right? They know the strengths and weaknesses of it. They know it's very difficult to cross the Kabul River, even though it looks shallow. It's very dangerous because at certain places it's much deeper and the undercurrent is much faster than people realize, and tanks and things will get stuck in there. So their idea was to attack Soviets as an ambush and then run away to the Kabul River, hide there, but also let the Soviets see some of them cross the river at a certain point. And the whole idea was to draw them there. And there's simulation and there's dissimulation, because they want to dissimulate that this is a difficult river to cross, and they want to simulate that it is an easy river to cross, and they're retreating. And what would happen in the situation is the Soviets would follow. They weren't familiar with that part of the environment, and they get stuck in the river, and the Mujahideen would open fire on them. And so that's an example of a FAR analogy, and then trying to apply it to cyber deception design. If you look at the next example, I'll give you an example of that, where you had repeated ambushes on a highway by a hotel, and the Soviets would keep coming down this highway in convoys, and the Mujahideen would keep setting up along this highway to ambush convoys. But sometimes they would set up ambushes and leave them vacant, and sometimes they wouldn't. And maybe an example of applying this would be a firewall on another part of the network that you haven't configured completely, or you've configured in the wrong way. So an attacker might test that and see what gets through and what doesn't. And you can change that over time. But this would be an example of taking a FAR analogy and then applying it to something on a network environment to designing your deception. Because a lot of this still comes back to the patterns of your network defenders and the patterns of your attackers. And those are behaviors and those are vulnerabilities. Can you move on to the next slide? So this is the final summation here of what this methodology is and how it's adaptive. And I realize this is totally a crash course on this. People will spend years learning this and applying it through a lot of trial and error. But step one, and this is for you as a takeaway as practitioners, whoever you're looking at, whatever activity you're looking at, even if you don't know who they are, try to start behaviorally assessing them, right? And if you have an idea of who they might be, this would include everything possible, right? But mainly, like, what are their attitudes towards things? What are their life experiences? What are their relationships? I really want to know who they love and who they hate, right? But this could even be an example of, you look at ransomware enterprises like Lockbit. So even if you don't know, going back a year, who is who, you know, with that developer or that group of developers, Lockbit's up, that they appear to be very sensitive to anyone suggesting that there's distrust between them and their affiliates. That's a behavioral vulnerability that you can identify because they've demonstrated, they've communicated it. And maybe you have some inside knowledge on that as well in terms of what affiliates are saying. But that's an example. You've got to have demonstrated, observed behavior. You can't just start guessing and laying up passive infrastructure, hoping people trip over it. The second step It's considering that victimology of who they're targeting and how they behave throughout that entire attack cycle. Because when you're doing behavioral analysis in an ideal situation, you want to look at pre-offense behavior, offense behavior, and post-offense behavior. You want to take as much data, behavioral artifacts as you can, and put it into an aggregate over a period of time. So you can start to see this is their baseline, and this is how they behave when this happens and when that happens. So really, being adaptive, part of that is also testing things, trying things, building infrastructure, and trying different approaches to see how they respond to it. If you can do that, because the idea is you want to yield and collect more behavior. The more behavior you collect based on how they respond, the better idea you have of who is this, what are their capabilities, and how do they respond in certain situations. And you, even if you don't know who they are, a starting point is always who are they victimizing? Who are they targeting? What does that tell me about them, right? If I see someone defacing a website of a very small NGO somewhere, and it doesn't make sense that they're defacing it with, say, an Islamist flag or something like that, what that might tell me, even if I don't know who they are, is that that website was most vulnerable and most available. That's it. Of course, their true target might be a military organization, but it wasn't available and it wasn't vulnerable. And maybe they're not good enough to compromise that site. It's a starting point, right? Where you start to shape who is this? What are their capabilities? And what can I design that they might be behaviorally responsive to? And step 3 is where you start to come up with a deceptive approach here, what your design plan might be. You can look at things like the Bell-Whaley framework to kind of think through, what do I want to simulate? What do I want to dissimulate? Do I want to do some kind of repackaging of network activity to make it look like something else so they're attracted to it, right? What do we think they're going to be most responsive to based on observed behavior? And then the fourth part of that is the design and creation or repurposing process. And that can be quick or it can take a long time. Depends on what your goals are, right? In my experience as an industry practitioner, we want to custom or repurpose build everything, not just that it's behaviorally based, but that we do it our own way. That's not always a scalability issue. It's really not, because you're concentrating on actual observed activity and behavior on your network or on the perimeter. It's not about what we think might happen, right? And this is where it meets that scalability standard. But you want to create something that you know you can measure as well to see if it's effective. And so those would be the 4 steps of an adaptive methodology. I think the final thing here is a second exercise. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the idea here is we just kind of touch on this briefly, and then people have the option, right, to submit answers later if they would like, because I don't know how much time there is left if anyone wants to discuss this, but go ahead, please. Oh, you have 3 minutes? I have 3 minutes? Okay. So this would be a very conceptual exercise. So really just a thinking exercise that I think you can reflect on, right? I mean, this is part of that creative design process. I have 3 scenarios here. All I'm asking for you to do is to pick one scenario. Clearly, there's limited information in these scenarios. When you look through this, this might give you an example of simulating, like, many organizations face these kind of issues. And so this is that conceptualizing or brainstorming process where you start thinking about, what can I do that can comprehensively respond to this kind of activity? As an example, I'll just focus on one scenario, and then of course the class can look at the other scenarios at their leisure. But maybe you have repeated business email compromise attempts of people spoofing email accounts and trying to contact people in your organization to get them to transfer money, right? And so when you think about victimology, you're thinking about who are they focusing on and why, and how do they have information on them? So it might be something about this is available in open source, or it might be there was an account that was compromised, someone was spearphished. But this is again where you start to see what are the capabilities of their attacker. But if they keep focusing on specific people, now maybe you have an opportunity to design something where you can control that response. And if you see things where it's like there's Cyrillic typos in some of the emails, it doesn't mean that they're Russian speaking or writing. It could be a deception. It could be a false flag. But again, it might give you an example of like, what's the level of quality in terms of how you want to respond to them. And so maybe you want to have something that they can click on that will basically kick them out or neutralize them in some way. Because at that point, you might start to get a baseline of like who they're targeting, how they speak to them, how they respond in an engagement. That could be a great opportunity maybe to take over an account of someone who's been emailed in your organization and start a correspondence, just being sure not to click on certain things, right? But this is where you start to build that behavior during that engagement. But the point of this process is to go through those steps of that adaptive methodology to come up with what could you build if you need to, infrastructure on your network for collection and management. What kind of content do you need to create? Maybe in this situation, it's a sock puppet account on for your organization to engage in communication. Maybe that person who's emailed forwards that on to your sock puppet account to say, hey, I'm actually the person handling financial transactions. I'm going to need a little bit more from you to complete this transaction. Anything that you might be able to build into that might collect a little bit more on that attacker and who they are. And that could be for your own purposes of your organization too, in terms of how you want to neutralize them. Maybe you want to pass on that information to law enforcement, whatever it might be. But these scenarios will give you an opportunity to be creative about what you design. And keep in mind as a final point here, what Maurice touched on initially is this is a storyline. Deception is a storyline to be effective. And so the technical aspects of it need to match or comport with the real life component to it, right? The content, who's masquerading, what things are they saying? Those things need to comport. They need to make sense. Like who in your organization would actually be handling something like this? But yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or this is going to be something for later. I can answer questions on Element. Just let me know. But otherwise, thank you for your time, everybody.
So we have an exercise and questions. Do you want to do some questions now and the exercise later? Do we have time for the exercise questions?
Well, yeah, we can do questions for the exercise, since it's probably going to take you some time to come up with some concept or design of deception. You can put it in the chat in Matrix, the live questions, Tim Pappa room, I think.
Okay.
You'll be glad to read it, what you come up with.
So do the exercise, not now, but do it, please. And please, I know the audio is not super good, but take advantage of Tim. He knows a lot. He's just letting you know a small part of that. So think about what you just heard, what is there, pick one scenario, and try to go through the methodology, like the 4 steps, and think really how you will do, like Tim said, this is story of deception, okay? It's very important. Not now, there's gonna be later, you put it in the chat matrix, but now we have time for questions for Tim, right?
Yes, do you have any questions?
Like, we can do some live here, and if we have some in the Matrix channel online, we can do. So any questions for Tim?
Don't be shy.
There are some in Matrix? Really, you don't have a question for Tim? I mean,
you have an ex-FBI.
I have like 100,000.
We have one.
Thank you. Hello, Tim. Do you have a kind of cool story to share with us that you can share? It's not behind a government NDA.
Sure. Yeah, I'll make it. I'll sanitize it, right? I'll speak very generally. One of the most surprising things I consistently saw in cases with cyber criminals is they know that as angry as you make them, they won't stop talking to you. So I think there's always a concern that don't make them angry, they won't want to talk to you. I saw the opposite because there was a strong motivation for money. So as one story, I had to create content for clickbait, which I already thought this is not going to work, because why would any kind of sophisticated attacker ever click on a link from someone they already don't like? So how are we going to do this? And this is where behavior is really impactful when you consider all these aspects of how people process information when they're emotional, when they're angry, whatever it might be, they process it differently. It's kind of like Maurice was talking about detecting deception early on. And this is why in certain situations, when you create a cognitive or an emotional overload in someone, it's harder for them to be deceptive because they're trying to process everything, but also they don't pay attention to things as much. They don't scrutinize things as much because they're in a state of overload. In this situation, we wanted this person to click on a link that would help us collect a little bit more about them. We knew obviously they'd be obfuscating some of their layers, they'd be coming off hot points, whatever. We still wanted to collect a little bit more on them once they clicked on a link that we controlled. And so what we did is we had a little bit of material that may or may not have been their voice based off of voicemails that they left on victims' phones, which is also a little outrageous that they did that, but it was comical to us. And so I created content that was to someone outside of that cybercrime group. It was very humorous and ridiculous. And I was essentially trolling them and making fun of them. Now, if you're inside their group, they're not going to find that funny. They're going to get angry. And if you look at the research literature on why people share different types of content, that's what it comes down to. It's got to be emotional. And if you're not part of that group, if you're angry about it, you're going to want to share it. The other aspect to that is curiosity. Curiosity operates much differently than us as like a motivation physiologically, right? And in our brains, because it's not like I've had this food before, I remember, I want to try it again. It's different. With curiosity, there's this drive to find out more, even if we know it's going to be negative. And so even if an attacker knows I shouldn't click on this link, if you frame it with content and infrastructure that's behaviorally based, in that situation it was, this guy won't stop talking to us. He's not the smartest person in terms of his choices, and he wants money. There was an approach with a sock puppet who had already spoken to him and been hostile and called him names like Script Kitty, which we were like, don't do that, because we're like, don't make it more negative or he's not going to even want to like listen to you. But this sock puppet came back and said, hey, not sure if this is you, but I think this is you. It's about you. That's it. And had a link to a private YouTube video, which is the content that I created. And sure enough, this guy clicked on it because I knew he had to find out what it said about him, because we knew he was very sensitive to his reputation. Even if I don't know everything I need to know, in 15 minutes of looking at this ransomware group's, at the time, Twitter profile, I started to draw some inferences of their outlook on things, because I saw in literally 18 months, they had rebranded twice. They had a different logo, a slightly different name. And a lot of people were making comments about them saying, I don't think they can hack anything. I think they're just buying data and then trying to extort people again. They don't really know what they're doing. Most attackers are very reputationally sensitive. So it's very important that they maintain that reputation, because they're counting on other people to trust them, to want to work with them. And so we were striking at the heart of that by creating content that he was very curious about and he had to find out about, and he clicked on it. So that was an example of like, that surprised me, because that should never happen, and yet it did. So my final point to that is, it doesn't matter how sophisticated you are as an attacker and how well you protect yourself, everyone is behaviorally vulnerable, and you can find a way to behaviorally exploit them, whether using some kind of technical approach paired with something else, or whether it's offline. It's possible with anyone. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. So that was the short answer, okay? I will do like with ChatGPT, Tim will say, be short, right? Okay, only one more. Internet
Short
here.
one.
Okay, if you go to the matrix and you stay in the matrix, you can answer those ones here in the room. Another one?
Trying to look. Let's see. There's one. Okay,
Wait.
I'll do this. Is there still time?
Yeah, we have just time for a small question. Is there any comparison profiling a common criminal and a cyber criminal?
The approach is the same. I mean, think about it like, if I'm looking at some offender offline who murdered someone with poison and they wanted to watch as that person died from poison, already I'm starting to build that picture, that victimology of like, they chose poison for a reason, and there's a reason they wanted to be there versus not there. And so there's tool selection. So you can apply that as a parallel to a cyber offender. There's a reason they chose that tool. It might just be what they have access to, what they're familiar with. If I find out that there's an attacker who likes to use a Kali Linux suite, that's okay. But it starts to tell me they don't really do their own builds. Maybe they're not capable enough to do that yet. It's not a given. It's never definitive, but it's a starting point for behavioral analysis of this is what they choose to do. Maybe we see communication as well in terms of how comfortable they are discussing that. I've seen hacking manifestos from cyber criminals and cyber terrorists where they plagiarize a lot of content, but then I see a lot of detail about use of apps on Androids. And again, I don't know everything I need to know about them, but it starts to tell me or suggest to me they're much more comfortable with an Android more than an iOS, which might tell me if I'm going to build something that they are going to want to target and make it look vulnerable, I probably need to stick in an Android app space because behaviorally based, that suggests to me this is what they're going to be responsive to. This is where even if you're in a space of you don't know everything you need to know about the person, you never will, you can start to shape based on behavior, even if you're keeping in mind, yes, this could be deceptive, it could be a false flag, you're still looking at demonstrated behavior over a period of time. So really, there's not a big difference there. It's very parallel in terms of how you approach behaviorally analyzing somebody.
Thank you very much. So shall we continue?
4 questions.
Yeah. So remember the exercise that Tim put there, also for the internet, this is for you. This is your opportunity to analyze something and put there. Tim promised to answer each of them online in Matrix. Thousands of those, he's going to be there. No, I don't know. But this is an opportunity, people. So thank you very much, Tim, for being here with us. It was crazy amazing. We promise to bring you to Prague maybe next year so you can be here physically. And if you want to continue watching the class, you can stay. And if not, we continue.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Recording stopped.
Should we do like a 5-minute break?
Like 2 minutes, just set up there. Try to see if you can start. Okay, for people watching online, we will just do a quick reset of our setup, and we will be continuing in the class soon.
Oh. Okay. We're gonna wait a minute or two to get a stream back. Yes. Well, yeah, basically if you think of some questions, here is the chat where you can ask. Tim will probably answer it as much as he can. There's a lot of people, so, but yeah. And we would really like to read if you write something for this exercise. So. Yeah, we're back. Okay. So it's back to the business as usual. And we are gonna now continue with doing some cyber deception as defenders. So we're gonna start with talking about honeypots. So the goal of this part is to learn what honeypots are and how to use them, install them, etc. And this is basically the rest of today's class because we have a lot to cover here because there are many of them. So basically, honeypots are security resources whose values lie in being probed, attacked, or compromised. All honeypots share 4 key characteristics. They need to be deceptive. They need to be discoverable, because you want to catch attackers, right? They need to be interactive for the attackers to stays. Now some more, some less, we'll see about that later. And they need to be monitored because we need some logs. We need to know what exactly attackers have been doing in our networks or systems and etc. And the honeypots can be literally anything from a simple file to an entire operating system. So since honeypots are something that is not used generally in production, it's not meant to be used in standard business, any attempt to interact with it is by automation considered malicious. It's an attack. So if somebody is touching your honeypot, your honey file, whatever, they are attacking you. And you have every right to treat them as attackers. Okay. So the honeypots also help us to watch attackers, and then we learn how they do it. We learn how the attackers attack. We learn what techniques they are using, what they are searching for, etc. So they can be really useful. Yeah, basically as I was saying, and yeah, we can gain some knowledge where the attacks come from, what techniques they like to use, etc. We can maybe even learn some new strategies because we got an attacker that can reveal us that because they are unaware they're in a honeypot. So let's have a nice example for you to get a little bit of a hang of what the honeypots are. We are going to deploy a very simple honeypot now, and then later we're going to move to some more complex stuff, but this is going to be a very nice intro for a little game again we have after the next break. So everybody get your containers, and let's create a directory that we will share on the web server. Online people, you also do this in your cyber lab. Please, if you have any questions or you are stuck, let us know. Okay. So let's just create a directory. Okay, I have already done this, but yeah, we can move into that directory. And we can create a README file. So far, so good. Offline people, online people, Yeah. I will take your silence as an affirmative answer. So let's create a Python web server. So there's a command for CTU students and for those following through Strato CyberLab. So let's create a screen, basically to run it, our honeypot in a background. So we're going to run it in a detached mode. We're going to use long formatting, and we're going to give it session name the first honeypot. Okay, this is the command to execute it on the screen. And this is if you don't know it, a very nice Python command to start a simple HTTP server on port 80. This is so loud now. Creating this simple HTTP Python server is often used in also many CTFs and stuff, so remember this one. And yeah, also the directory we want to share on our web server. So let's do it. Okay, so let's check if it's actually running. Online students, you can do it with tmux instead of screen because I'm not sure there's screen installed in CyberLab, or you can install screen in your CyberLabs if you want. Should be very simple. So let's check web servers of other students, your colleagues from CTU. Online people, sadly you can only scan your own web server, but still you will be able to see something. So let's do a little nmap, basically to try to identify the service version, and we're just gonna check the port 80 because that's where our web servers are. So this is gonna take a moment, probably, because we're gonna scan each other and try to find a bunch of stuff. Yeah, for the online people, this is your command. So I'm gonna start it here as well. So if you get some results, let us know. Right. Are there any questions so far regarding any part of today's lecture so far? Everything clear? Okay. So, okay, we can leave our Nmap to do its job, and we're gonna take a 10-minute break and then see our results, yeah, after the break, okay? Because this is gonna take a bit. All right, so see you at 16:39. Yeah, but now it's longer, I think. Yeah, okay. So, are we back? Did your Nmaps finish? I think I did in mine. A lot of stuff going on. 88 hosts up for me, so it's good. But we were basically doing this to kind of attack each other, so that we can now see the logs of our honeypots. So let's read them. Let's open the screen. Ooh, a lot of stuff. So are you all here? Do you have your screens, logs? Yes, no? All right, so what is happening here? Does maybe someone want to make a comment on what we are seeing here? I have very nice whistles here. I'm gonna blow in this one that I'm gonna give you. I have my own. So, for a whistle, does anybody want to comment on what we are seeing on our screens? Not just mine, yours as well. Yeah, Jan, you. Okay, someone is trying to get pretty specific files. Okay, why do you think that is happening? Or what is happening exactly? Because it's not only get, right? Yes, some posts as well, exactly. So basically we can see here the results of Nmap scans to our honeypots that we deployed. Here's a whistle. So yeah, we can see this is basically how Nmap, what it does when it's scanning services. You can see it's trying to get some stuff to post. Even, of course, the post method doesn't work. It's trying some common file names. It's still happening for me. Somebody's scanning. It's trying some common paths. So basically, in this way, we have sort of a honeypot, a log that we can, even if you pay attention, somebody was scanning me just now, you can see in the moment that someone is trying to do, oh, here it goes again, someone is trying to do Nmap to scan your IP and ports. So you might ask, okay, what's the difference between this and some logger? Well, this is, first of all, loggers are generally more complicated. This is a very simple solution if you need something in a moment to confirm to you, okay, there's something going on in your services. It's a very simple one. It's basically just an open HTTP server which you monitor, and that's it. But if you're suspecting somebody is scanning you and you deploy this, this can confirm it. Of course, you would need to save then these logs somehow, because they are not automatically saved by the script we deploy, because we did something very simple. This is just kind of a primitive example of a honeypot, just to illustrate the idea that you can monitor. And here you see a bunch of attackers doing scanning on your computer. Okay, did everyone get some results? Some logs, scans? You can just nod, you don't have to say anything. I don't bite. All right. Any questions? Okay, so as I said, this is a very simple honeypot, and it of course has some issues. First of all, it runs as root, and the issue is if, you know, someone might maybe take advantage of that and then have root privileges. We don't want that. So it's not separated from real system, and it's easy to identify as a honeypot. And as I mentioned earlier, the logs are not stored. They are just happening there, but once you exit them, if you close the screen forever, then you lose all your logs. So later on we're going to do some more complicated honeypots, which are widely used in practice today by defenders. Okay, but before that, some theory about honeypots and some characteristics of them. As I mentioned, honeypots can be anything from simple files to complete operating systems. So we can say we have these honey systems, basically mimicking entire operating systems. It can be Linux, I'd say most often, but also Windows, navigation systems, etc. We have honey services, which are a bit simpler than honey systems, and they just imitate some service, telnet, SSH, SMB, RDP, stuff like that. So they are just, you know, a service somewhere in the network. They are not entire interactive operating system. And again, even simpler than that, we have Honeytokens, which mimic specific data, or a real data that is modified somehow or tainted to that can modify us that attack is happening. For example, it can be some documents, users, passwords, tables in databases, usually anything that is, as I mentioned earlier, not used as a part of our day-to-day business, and the usage of it. For example, somebody tries to log in with user and password, which is never used. Okay, it's a honey user and password, somebody is attacking us. And based on the interaction, we can separate honeypots into usually three types. We have low interaction honeypots, which are basically the attacker doesn't have any actions. They just touch it, and we know they touched it, and that's it. They can't do anything elaborate in it. We have high interaction honeypots, which are really good for defenders and researchers especially, because there the attackers have much more liberty. They can try stuff out, they can move around. If it's imitating an operating system, they can try out commands, they can type stuff, maybe even execute stuff, but they are more risky to implement in systems than low interaction honeypots, because you're giving all of this freedom to attackers. So if they break out of the sandbox environment, then they can endanger your real system. So it's a trade-off that comes there. You learn more about the attackers, but it's a greater risk for you. Also, you learn more about the attackers, but it takes you more time, more effort, more nerves to implement those high interaction honeypots, depending is if the reward will be satisfactory for you or not. And then there are these medium interaction honeypots, which are kind of in between the low interaction ones and high interaction ones. And it's kind of most common. They are balancing the collection and risk. So the honeypot we had deployed earlier, our first honeypot, what type would you say it was? Candy? Anyone? You have one strawberry, one lemon, and a bunch of oranges. So what was the interaction of the honeypot we had? It's a very simple answer, come on. Anybody who hasn't had a candy or a whistle yet? Yes, the question was the honeypot that we had deployed just earlier. Which type of interaction would you say it had? High interaction, why? Well, did they have a freedom of movement there? Like once, what was the result for the attacker? And remember that we were attackers when we did the nmap. We were attackers with the nmap command. So what did we receive from it? Okay. Yes, and once the scan finished, what did we find out? I'm not talking about the logs that the logs you are looking as a defender, but as the person who did the nmap. Like, you found what ports are open, right, on other IP addresses. But did you interact with those ports? Could you do some commands? Okay, so basically that simple honeypot, yeah, did you want to say something? Okay. Yeah, exactly. Like the attacker just found out the open ports, and you, even as a defender, just knew that someone is scanning, but they didn't have a freedom to do any commands to look around the system to try to exploit something. Okay, which flavors do you want? Strawberry, lemon, or orange? And your colleague? This is strawberry. Nice. Orange. Perfect. All right. So yeah, this is the graph showing basically the more interactive honeypot it is, the more we can learn from our attackers if they get inside. Literally the commands, the techniques, the entire process, but it also requires more effort to be deployed. And you will see both today and in your assignment that it can really be painful to do good honeypots, but later about that. Now we're gonna do, hopefully, a fun experiment. So you only need your browsers to do this, and we would really appreciate it if you do, both online people and all of you here. So there's this link. You click on it, and it will take you to this very nice web page from the 90s. No, I'm just kidding. It was from this year, but I'm not a web developer. So we will only require you to leave your address in the email address field, and yeah, we will not collect any other data about you. And if you want to later opt out of the experiment, please let us know. So what do we need you to do? When you submit your email address, you will be randomly assigned a system. It will either be a real Ubuntu or it will be a honeypot, okay? And we modified the response times of both to simulate a kind of a slow IoT system, and also take in mind that there's gonna be a few hundred people connecting now to this, so it might be a bit slow. Don't mind it, please. So basically half of you will get a real Ubuntu and half of you will get a honeypot. It's randomly decided. The chances are 50-50. Okay. So how do attackers behave in honeypots? We never know for sure. Like if they are suspecting honeypot, usually their goal is not to be detected. So they either probably leave or I don't know. So there are two goals for you in this game. The most important one for you is not to get detected. So if you're suspecting a honeypot or something, try to not get detected and behave in accordance to not get detected. The other thing is that you need to find somewhere in the system a hidden crypto wallet key. And it's more important not to get detected than to find the key, but the key is what makes you win, okay? So I will give you 10 minutes to play. And yeah, basically, if you find the key, put it in the submission field. It will open for you when the shell loads. Otherwise, there will be a give up option if you are unable to find the key in these 10 minutes. And the most other very important part is when you finish, there will be a survey to fill. So please wait a few seconds for the survey to load, because the survey is very important to us. Do not reset the page before you complete the survey. And please do not communicate like with your colleagues. Try to do it on your own. And then we're gonna look at results. Okay.
So remember for the internet too, if there are any questions, they have some 30 seconds delay only.
Okay. So I will wait, and yeah, I'm gonna give you now 10 minutes.
Questions? Anyone?
To play with it.
Was it clear? Internet was clear? Tell us if not.
So yeah, basically.
Experiment for all of you. Yeah.
You have to figure out what system you are in and.
Okay, 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So until 02.
Yeah. And then the goal is not to be detected, and hopefully you find the key.
So in the internet, they're asking that they put the email on the terminal start. Yes, that's where you play, okay, in the browser. So you put your email, the terminal will open. Already one of the two systems is assigned to you. You have to play there. Whatever you want to do, just follow the instructions, okay? And then at the end, there is a small, very small survey. Fill it.
Yes.
Please.
It's
or ask questions.
Google Forms one, so. I know this is probably like first time for some of you to encounter honeypots, but just try to think of what might you look for if you're trying to figure out how to exfiltrate something from somewhere. And if you want to know, are you being deceived? And once you finish, maybe just raise a hand so I know roughly that it's going okay. Yes.
You want to take this one? Or should I?
You can repeat
the question
it,
was, how do you know if it's a honeypot or not, right? Well, that's the question of the experiment. How do you know? You have the class, you have all the things you look, deception, ideas, techniques. Okay, so do you want to say the rules again? You should not know it, except you type things and you act
you try
following the instructions to finish, right?
Figure out if, and maybe you'll find something suspicious in the behavior of your shell, so maybe that will incline you to believe you're in a honeypot, or you won't find anything suspicious because maybe you're in a real system.
Yeah. So you have to fill the goal, right? Like fulfill the goal like a normal attacker, but not to be detected. So how do you know? We will see. Try not to be detected.
So the big question from the internet, once you do the submission, it doesn't say it's right or wrong.
Exactly.
No, probably we can say later, right?
Yeah, we can send you like on an email.
In the moment, we are not telling you which one it is, because maybe after filling the survey, you want to play again, it's fine. But we can tell you later if you want.
Yes.
More questions? No? Fulfill the goal as an attacker. Can you outsmart? Yeah.
Yeah, if you find the key, it's just put the part after the sign of the equality. So there's going to be something and the sign of equality. So the solution is the part after, in case you're trying the entire thing and it's not accepting it. So do we have some people in here that have already finished, just to know roughly how many of you are? Just put your hand up for me to... Okay, we have at least one person who's done it. Yeah, I know, I just want to get a rough idea. Okay, so what? I mean, you're done when you submit the survey. Okay, so that's what I mean by that. Should I try to play? Yeah, also if you're like looking for a key in that format of BSY flag, it won't be in that format, so. And it doesn't matter if you don't manage to find it, we value the survey more. Well, it's doing something. We see everything that you're doing. Okay, one more minute, maybe even less. Okay, I'm gonna take a look if we have some survey responses by now. Okay, we have 5 here. Okay. We have 6 here. Okay. Good. All right. So, I mean, you can keep doing it if you want. I'm just gonna look at the results here. Do I tell which one is which? Because I know I have two forms and one was... Yeah, I won't, I'm trying not to show them. So, can I say which one is the real system? I would say later in class because there are people playing. Okay, yeah, true. So, but we can see that in one system we have roughly 2/3 for Honeypot and 1/3 for real system. On the other one it's like 80-20. Now which one is real? Interesting results. We have some answers. All right, thank you all for playing this. We really do value this greatly. It helps us a lot. So yeah, you can see in this system here. Sorry, what are? Well, one is the form that you fill when you get a honeypot. One is when you get a real system. Yeah, that's why. Right. So, thank you. So we see that in case of one thing, people are not sure. In case of the other, they are a bit more sure. It's a honeypot. Doesn't mean they are correct, but we will see later. So thank you again for participating. And now we can, I think, move on with our lecture. Yes.
Something you can say about the results without saying which one is which one? Like about the errors? I didn't see. Or you have to...
Well, we see in general that people are not too confident about whatever choice they make.
Okay.
Okay, here they are a bit more confident.
And about the answer themselves, how many times they are wrong, for example? Do we have something...
What do you mean? Well, if I say that, then they will know like which one is...
So we cannot know how many times they're wrong without saying wrong in what?
Yeah. Like
okay. So we can say that later. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah. Okay. So we now interacted with one. Some of you at least did interact with one honey system, a honeypot that was pretending to be a Linux shell, basically a Linux operating system. We'll analyze later how successful it was. But yeah, the honey systems are generally very complex because they simulate entire operating systems. But before we go into those full honey systems, I will just briefly show you something about Honeytokens, or that is to get a grasp of how they work. So we're gonna create, all of us, a URL token. And you can actually do it by going to this link. And they offer a variety of honey tokens. You can create them and then plant them somewhere in your system. So if somebody touches them, you get a notification on your email. So for this exercise, we can create, for example, a link URL token. So you can put your email here and some message for yourself to know like which token, if you have multiple, was triggered. And then you go to create canary token. I've already done so, so you can see my token here. If you click on it, it's just some, I think, some web page, some GIF or something is there. But you can, if you want, maybe even share your tokens and then to check how the email notifications work they are getting. If you want to stop email notifications, you can. You will see when you get an email, manage your token and you can discontinue it so you don't get spammed or something. But yeah, basically each time somebody opens a token like this, you should get an email notification, and that way you know, okay, somebody is doing something in my system, touching stuff that should not be touched. And there are many more, as you can see here. They offer here at Canary tokens, DNS tokens. You can create QR codes, MySQL dumps, AWS keys, basically even some JavaScript cloned websites. There's many options depending on what type of attacker you're trying to capture. So did anyone try to create a token? Did you succeed? Did you share it in Matrix maybe? Or?
We can share the token in Matrix. Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Please go and try. Okay, go, open, click, practice.
See if you get a notification.
You can create your own.
Okay. Did you do it? Did somebody maybe click on your token? We'd like if you share. Online people. Okay, you're seeing this 30 seconds after I say it, so I'm gonna wait a bit. All right, then please let us know during the class if somebody clicks your token. But yeah, basically this is just a plastic example how this might work. In real life, you will put some either bogus files or data somewhere in your system, and when somebody touches it, you know you've been probed. So you're gonna try to get them out of your system probably, or monitor them to see what they are doing. But now we are moving to the fun part, the Honey services. So just one Honey service. The first one I want to just briefly mention here, but you have a big explanation in the side dish, the extra material for this class, so you can check it out. But it's the Infinite web page, a very nice Honeypot developed here at Stratosphere. Simple Honeypot web server. It literally delivers an infinite web page to anyone asking anything from it. So it uses some sticky properties to retain attackers and to keep them on the website as long as possible. It literally just fills the disk if the download of the content is automatic, because it's just infinitely adding more stuff. But now we're gonna practically do something, and we're gonna make a very nice honeypot, and which is called Cowrie. And Cowrie is one of the honeypots that is really often used in cybersecurity practice and in research. People are always kind of using it to compare it to other honeypots, or as their honeypot if they are deploying honeypots. It is medium to high interaction honeypot, and it can give us information on who is attacking us, so IP address, if it's human, if it's bot. So unlike the honeypot we had, like the simple one web server, it gave us the address of the attacker, but now we have much more than just the IP address. We have the credentials that people use to enter our system. We have the commands they were issuing while they were in our system. We can watch the entire history. We can even replay what they were doing in our system. And it's basically designed to kind of mimic Linux shell. So now it's turn for you to try it as well, to play with it and to try to set it up, modify it, and we're gonna do it together actually. So first we need to download Cowrie. So we're gonna create a user with disabled password, called Cowrie. Yes. All right. And once we have our user, we're gonna change to that user because we are gonna run our honeypot not as root, but as this user. And why don't we want to run our honeypot as root? Question for a whistle. I even mentioned it briefly earlier. Should I whistle again? If you want to make this sound, you can maybe say, why don't we want to run our honeypot as root? Yes. Yes, so if the attacker manages to leave the sandbox, they can do some real damage. Let's try it. Oof. Okay, no harm, done. Thank you. Safely delivered. Okay, so let's now clone our honeypot. Actually clone the repository, and then we're gonna make our honeypot. It's open source. It's freely available to everyone, so that's why it's another reason why Cowrie is so popular. So let me know when you've pulled it from GitHub so that I can continue. Are we fine online? Do I need to explain something more? Slow down, speed up? Any questions maybe? All right, so did we do it? Yes? No? Some issues? No, is it still, no, yeah, okay. Did you manage a git clone? Yeah. Can we move on? Great. So now we're gonna create a virtual environment in which our honeypot is gonna run. So this is the command, virtual environment, Python 3, and we're gonna call it Cowrie environment. Yeah, Cowrie. Okay, created virtual environment. Are we okay?
For some people, maybe in the Stratos Cyber Lab, the virtual env is not there. You have to install the package. I will share the command.
Okay, thank you. I was trying it, I think, but it's possible. Yeah, and we're gonna activate our environment. So if you successfully activated your environment, you should see this name of your environment before your hostname handle here. So do you all see it in your Dockers? I apologize to online people. So we will also need to install some more packages to run our Cowrie, so you can go ahead with this command as well. It also might take some time, so this is a good place for everyone to catch up, get on the same place. Did you install the requirements? Do you need some more time?
People online will need a bit more time. I'm not sure here if you're all set.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna wait a bit. We have time. It's going as planned. Drink some water. Right. Does anyone have any issues? We have people here who can help you if something is stuck or not working. Yeah. Did you install the requirements, everything? Not if you're still alive, yeah. Okay, so let's copy the configuration file, or actually create one. There is a command here. We're copying to Cowrie.cfg. And then we need to edit a bit this file, and that is to enable telnet, because you can do either SSH to Cowrie or you can telnet to it, or there are many ways to access it, so we're gonna try both. So we're gonna enable telnet, and yeah, you can find the place in the, when you open the configuration file at line 653. If you're using Vim, you can just do -653 and go there. So let's, yeah, here we are, enabled, change it to true, right? So do we have everyone update their configuration files? Is it going okay online? So. We have some errors. Okay, thank you. So if we are okay, we can continue and actually start our honeypot. All right. So this is the command, bin Cowrie start. So go ahead and do it. Okay, using activated Python virtual environment. And now we are gonna check if our honeypot is actually running. So we can, it should be running either on port, well, not either, but both on port 2222 and 2223, depending if it's SSH or telnet. Since we are running both, the both should be active. So let's do netstat anp. And yeah, we can find here at ports localhost here 2222 and 2223. Do you all have your Cowrie running? Is it okay? Any issues, questions, problems? Okay, so we can also check with PSAFX if we want. So yeah, we see that our Cowrie is, there's a process running. So now we're gonna play a bit. So I need you, so this is for the CTU people, sadly online people, we can't do this. You will be able to access your own Cowrie, but not someone else's. But for the people here, you can put your Docker IP, and we can try to access someone's honeypot. And yeah, for user, use root. For password, try anything that you want, and then we will discuss it later. And let's do an SSH one, so to port 2222. So even I'm gonna try it as well. SSH root at 172.20.0. Let's say 47 port 2222. Connection refused. Okay, we have someone who I have to guess. For someone who managed to do it. 26. No. Do I have right IPs? Wait, let me try. Okay, I can connect to myself.
Sorry, I will interrupt a little bit. For the people online, this will not work sharing your IP because you have no one in your own network, okay? So you can connect to yourself to that port, we will see in a bit. But the IP sharing on the channel is for the people that are on the same network, which is CTO students.
Yes. So can I get someone's, like these two numbers from their IP address who have their Cowrie deployed and are in here? 32. Ah, perfect. Thank you, Lukasz. Password. And I'm in. Okay. Did you all manage to get into somebody's honeypot? Yeah. Do you also see something like this? Root at SVR04 something when you log to your colleagues' honeypots? Scream if yes. So we can even do some commands here. ls, lsa. Okay, there we can maybe try to cat. Oh, but something happened here. No such file or directory, but there is, isn't it? So maybe this honeypot isn't really what we want from a honeypot. Okay, did you manage to get into some honeypot and play with it a bit? Try some commands? Okay. So, this honeypot at the state it is right now, it's kind of obvious. Can you tell me some things that make it a bit strange? Or something that's weird here that doesn't quite fit? Or what might indicate you here that you're in a honeypot? Anything. It doesn't even have to be on my screen. You maybe tried some command on your own, or it did work, it didn't work. You can also try it via telnet or encat to get into one of the honeypots. If you want to try to get to mine, it's 0.8. I would actually like it very much if somebody does it, because then I can show you the logs in the later step. So if you go to put number 8 here and do some commands in my honeypot, we can discuss some stuff later. You can get very nice whistles or candy. So, anybody wants to comment something like what might get you thinking that this is a weird system or not a real system? Well, one of the things for me at least is there is a file that exists here, but I couldn't later read it for some reason, and not because I'm forbidden, but because the file doesn't exist, though it exists. Okay. Also, when you see a lot of Cowrie honeypots, you will notice that kind of SVR04 is common for all of them, the default user Phil, so you kind of get a hang of how to recognize them if they are in this state when you encounter them. Of course, they can be modified a bit. So let's check some logs from our Cowrie.
Be sure that everyone can execute and try Cowrie in others, okay? So connect to Cowrie of other people, go there, play commands, try to find out what Maurice is showing you, like how to realize this is Cowrie, right?
Yes. Okay, we have some, well, I have some logs here. Let's check it out if something is happening. Okay, new connection I have here from 172.20.020. Thank you, whoever this is. So we can see in our logs who is trying to attack us. Also, we can even see maybe the not maybe, but for sure, we can see the credentials they used. If you look here, somebody tried to log in and actually succeeded with username root and the password la. We'll see later why in configuration file when we look at it, why some of these passwords work, because we are going to be modifying Cowrie to make it more believable, more engaging for attackers. So this is a nice thing we can get from our logs. We can also even see the commands someone was trying. Somebody tried ls here to check the root folder. It's nice. Do you have logs in your own Cowries? Does anybody have something interesting in their logs they would like to share? Some fancy commands? No? Don't be shy. We can, even if we want to check the new connections, like everybody who connected to us, we can, when we are in our logs, use a new connection. New connection. And it highlights all the new connections. Takes us to the first new connection that we have. Or we can even just list everyone who tried to connect to us. Yep. There are a bunch of connections for me. See. Right, did you manage to reproduce this to get how many people logged into your Cowrie? Did anyone have more than 3 different IPs? 2, 1, 0? And what is really nice, you can even watch the attacks in real time as they were happening. So if you do this, right. And then you go to your Cowrie folder. Okay, we all now have our virtual environment started, so we don't have to do that, but we can check if we have some sessions to replay. Okay, I have a bunch of, so let's pick one at random. I'm gonna take this ID of a session and, okay, I'm gonna actually, So let's take a random session. And we can look at what the person was doing in our honeypot. Okay, this person just exited immediately. But yeah, you can see it in real time. Let's maybe try some other, this one. Okay, let's see what was happening here. Okay, there's some ls, nothing happened. Okay, cd back into the root. So there are some files. Somebody tried to do cd to something that doesn't exist. Looking for some hidden files. Looking at home folder. Looking at home fill. Very nice functionality where you can check actually what was happening in your system. Okay, so what is a problem with some honeypots? They can be easily identified. You can do fingerprinting of them. We have some nice links here if you want to read more about it. And one question is a lot of people ask is, do honeypots attract more attackers? We don't know. Maybe someone is gonna think, okay, they have honeypots, so I may be able to break into their system if I manage to leverage the honeypot. Maybe we know that people definitely get trapped in honeypots. We have a lot of data. We have some honeypots running in our labs. We analyze that all the time. So honeypots definitely have a purpose. But the question is, would you put a honeypot in your production server where you have all the important things that you need in your life? And Vero is saying no here. And yeah, we're kind of, a lot of people will tell you no because it's simply too risky. Though we are kind of trying to do something here, maybe like, oh, if there was only something that could help us. You know, you have a honeypot, you interact with it, but you're not actually executing real commands. Who knows when something like that will appear? We'll see later. Okay, so let's modify Cowrie a bit to make it more believable. And pay attention now because you'll be doing something similar for your assignment. So we are gonna copy the user database. And we are gonna edit it a bit. We're gonna add a new user. Called BSY. And this is, now let's look at the reason why you could have logged with basically any password you tried to other honeypots. This is a configuration file where you make this star means any honeypot, any password will be accepted for this user. For example, for root, the password root is not accepted, or password 123456. You can log in as Oracle with any password, or no user with some password. So these are some rules. So we put the new user BSY. So and we need to restart the Cowrie to apply these changes for them to take effect. So every time you update something in your system to make it more believable, you need to reboot it. So let's try to SSH to it. I don't know if you have done this. Can I try someone's IP or do I go to myself? Okay, I'm just gonna go 0. Okay, please put 20 0 here. I missed this one. I was fixing. What? password is anything. And yes, now we can see our user is not called root anymore, but it's actually BSY. Did you manage to change the user? If we check home directory, it has also taken changes there. You see now you have BSY and Phil in the root home. Okay. So this is one of the ways you can modify actually your systems, actually the Cowrie, to make it more believable. Another thing would be to make it not recognizable as Cowrie, to change the host name, or to some commands maybe are not working, so you would need to implement that. Maybe if we do, you see Phil California, kind of suspicious. So there are many things you can do. You can look there. Your main folder is empty. Nobody really has empty stuff. So to make it more believable, these are some things you can do. You can populate it with files, and there is a documentation of Cowrie explaining how you can do all these things, and it will sort of be your. But we will talk about it later. So here are the instructions how you can deactivate Cowrie. But please do it after you finish the assignment 5, because you will need Cowrie running for the assignment we have today, because we will be connecting to your Dockers, checking if your Cowrie is if your Honeypot is believable, if it simulates a real system well enough or not. And once you do everything that's necessary to make it believable, but you will get a flag. But so please don't clean up Cowrie yet until you finish the assignment. I mean, you can clean it up if you don't want to do the assignment. That's always an option. And the last meal of today's is something called shelLM. So without me explaining what it is, you can please log into this and use password Tommy. You can do it both online and here. So first, of course, you can exit if you are in the Cowrie. And the password is Tommy. Okay. So let's try to interact with it a bit. You can try some commands. You can even suggest me some commands. I usually start with, it's kind of a impulse now for me to do the ls, no matter what I am, but you can try something else. Try to leave. You can try to log in again. So what do you think is happening here? Did you try some commands? Did you get some interesting response? Anyone? Can you even try 3? Yeah.
So also for the people in the internet, okay? So we're gonna tell you what this is. We just want you to first use it and give us what do you see here? How do you feel? What's going on in there, right? Yeah. Also the people online, connect there. It's gonna work for you. Go try things you have. And now we are gonna tell you what's going on behind the scenes, okay? In this Honeypot part.
Yep. See, I need to learn how to write. But you see, there's no such file or directory, domusense. Maybe we can try to create a file. We can read it, okay? We can create files, read files. So, since we are close with time, I will start talking a bit, but have you tried?
Do you want to make them guess what it was?
Well, yeah.
Do you have enough whistles?
Yeah, I have 2 more, but I mean...
Only correct answers.
Yeah. So if you played, you probably interacted with something that looks like Linux shell. Did you find anything interesting? Some command response? Anything? Please share. What commands did you try? Okay. Okay. Sometimes it defaults to the home directory. I'm just repeating for the online people, and sometimes it doesn't show where you're going when you're going up. Okay, thanks. I'm not gonna throw it. Come later. So why do you think this might be happening? Because I'm sure that not all of you had the same experience as this one. So basically what you were playing here, you didn't interact with a Linux shell or any actual system. No actual commands were run when you were playing with this. Everything you saw was actually generated text. And we call this shelLM. It's basically an LLM honeypot. It's a large language model that simulates Linux shell. And whatever you do, you can try even curls and wgets and whatever, and you're gonna get some response. You can even try ping, I think. Something that's sure. And you're gonna get a response, probably timed. Okay, you did some pinging, but it's actually all generated text. No real ping was actually done. It was just some nice large language model simulating all of these responses and times. So why might this be good? Well, even if you figure out you're in a honeypot, how do you break out of it? Okay, in a Cowrie you can break out of the sandbox environment, and then you issue some commands, you break out, and you're in a real system. But what do you do here? No command is gonna actually be run. So maybe it's not so dangerous to put it in your production system if you can make it believable enough. So yeah, user never interacts with a real system. And it can mimic any service. Here we had an example of Linux shell that you access via SSH, but you can do more. We can go beyond shelLM to something that we call VelLMS. And shelLM is a part of it, but VelLMS also can simulate MySQL, POP3, HTTP, basically generate HTML where you get that you can, render. You get web pages that look pretty decent. Can simulate POP3, which is an email server if you have an attacker who's looking for some juicy emails or something. So if you want to try it, you can of course always play it on this link. You can SSH to it, but if you want to get it yourself and adjust it for yourself, you can check it on our GitHub repository for VelLMS, and you can play with it, try it, maybe create a prompt that's gonna behave better than this one that we had in the class now to show. The one we have is actually also fine-tuned, so it's nice. I hope you try to play with it, or that you will try to play with it a bit more. But yeah, well, no, people are still probably doing the experiment, so yeah. Any questions before the recap? Any comments, online questions? No? All right, so you okay? I know you're tired, it's late, I'm finishing, so what makes Honeypot successful? Basically, just to recap, we need to be able to see them because we want to see what the attackers are doing. We want attackers to think honeypots are actually valuable targets they want to attack. And we want them to actually use those systems and to return back to them and interact with them all the time. There are some other honeypots that we like. It's an extra side issue. You can look at them. And yeah, there's the assignment for next week. Do I explain it or somebody else wants?
Who is going to open it? We have a new opener of assignments.
I mentioned a bit already.
In the meantime, questions? No? LLMs? Were you not impressed by the LLM? Nobody said nothing. It was a lot of AI behind the scenes. The magic.
No, they're still shocked.
They don't believe it. There is AI there. I just say AI so many times.
Yeah, this class was fake, actually.
Yeah, hello. So there's going to be a new assignment again today at exactly 9 p.m. as usual. So you need to have a Cowrie installed and running just the way you did right now. It needs to be listening on port 2222, so please have that. And there's going to be an attacker attacking you, and you need to convince him that it maybe is a real system. So we recommend you to check logs for more information. And by making it more believable that it's a real system, you might eventually receive a flag. So do you have some questions?
And yeah, please look. You're going to need some help from Cowrie documentation. We couldn't, due to time, go through everything here, but need to read up a bit how to change some stuff to make them believable. But you will be, as Martin said, monitor please the logs, and you will get some hints there.
You can get creative.
Yeah.
Like we are looking forward to that. Oh yeah, and for the online students, sorry, this week there is no challenge for you, so you have a free week, but next week we will prepare for you something again. Thank you.
And this one is 6 points, so you can imagine.
And it's just one flag, so you need to do some stuff, and you get one flag, 6 points. And please fill the feedback. We really value it and appreciate it. We always read it, we take it in consideration, so help us make this class better for you and for us and for everyone. So, as usual, thank you very much. And
thank you, people, and see you next week. Thank you, Internet. Bye-bye. See you next time. Have a beautiful weekend. And be ready for the assignment and prizes.
And the next lesson is going to be also very fun. Small teaser. You don't want to miss the next lecture. Come live. Trust me. It's worth it.